Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Council's Zoom meeting of the 30th of April. I am Andy Watson, the Mayor. I have with me in the room or on Zoom Councillors Brian Carter, Warren Panapa, Jane Dunn, the Deputy Mayor Nigel Belsham, Councillors Kath Ash, Fee Dalgetty, Dave Wilson, Jill Duncan, Tracy Hira, Angus Gordon, and Councillor Richard Lambert. I have on my right our Chief Executive Peter Beggs, which means that we have no apologies for this meeting. Thank you very much. In terms of the order of business today, I do have a late item and we have a number of tabled items today. We'll deal with those as they come. The late item is with respect to the naming of a lane in Martin. Can I just ask the Chief Executive, do you have any further changes to the items?
No.
Thank you very much. We'll now go looking for the confirmation of minutes from the last meeting, starting at page 11 and looking for alterations or corrections. Sorry, my apologies. Already made a mistake. I'll ask the Chief Executive to read the council prayer, please.
No. Almighty God, as members of the Rangitikei District Council, we give thanks for all the good things of our district and the advantages we enjoy. We pray that you'll give us wisdom and guidance as we conduct the affairs of this meeting. We pray for all of the communities in the district we represent. Help us to be fair and honest in our discussions, and help us to work together in unity for the welfare of all your people. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Now moving to looking to confirm the minutes of the first meeting, the Tuesday the 24th of March. Looking for alterations and corrections, pages 12, 13, 14. Please, councillors, indicate with your hands up if you have a question. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Would somebody like to move that those minutes be regarded as a true and accurate record? Thank you. Councillor Lambert moving, Councillor Wilson seconding. Those in favour?
Aye.
I have no one against. Carried. Thank you. Looking for also confirmation of the minutes, the meeting Thursday the 23rd of April, starting page 25. Again, looking for alterations, corrections. 25, 26, 27. Would somebody like to so move? Councillor Nigel Belsham, Councillor Jane Dunn. Those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. I have no one against.
You didn't have all four.
Carried.
And this just get a clear show of hands as the preferred way, because there was some that had not a full no against.
Yeah. Do you want me to go back?
Yes, please.
Can I just a technical item from the Chief Executive, can I have a very clear show of hands from all of those councillors, please, for the first set of minutes? All of those in favour? Thank you. We have everybody. And for the second set of minutes, all those in favour?
Not Councillor Hira. She was absent.
Thank you. Acknowledging that Councillor Tracy Hira was absent for the meeting, otherwise everybody confirms. Thank you very much. We move now to the Mayor's report, which is starting on page 29. I'm certainly going to take it as a tabled report I will take any questions around it, but I would like to stress my thanks for the community that have assisted with the welfare servicing our communities, and for the number of staff that have been working with community on welfare related issues. I'll take any questions. It seems as though I have no questions. I'll move that receipt of my report, seconded by, thank you, Councillor Carter. Could I have a show of hands for those in favour? Thank you. We have everyone's hands carried.
Point of order, Your Worship. We go back to the start and have conflict of interest.
I'll deal with that now. In terms of, I'm asking councillors whether they have any conflict of interest of any item today on the agenda. It is also quite normal for councillors to be able to raise those during the agenda. Councillor Carter, do you have a conflict of interest?
On the last item of the day, attachment 12,
Which is?
regarding funding for organisations.
Thank you very much. Taken as noted. Are there any further conflicts? Thank you, Councillor Carter. We'd like to welcome and bring into the room Clive Pedley. I'm just waiting for staff to bring him up. This is relating to the item of the Te Awa Trust.
Community Foundation.
Te Awa Community Foundation. Clive, welcome to a council meeting.
Thank you, Mayor.
We have quite an exhaustive report in front of us. Would you like to take us through that, or will you regard it as a tabled document and speak to it?
I'll just speak to it as a tabled document just to give it some context. And so just to clarify, what you have in front of you is a in principle joint agreement that has been provided to all of the territorial authorities in the Horizons region following a territorial authority leaders forum that occurred last month. The context for this is the Te Awa Community Foundation, of which I'm the chair, and on a board of trustees, which includes a local trustee, Fenella Devlin, was launched in April 2019 with founder of many of the community foundations in New Zealand, Sir Stephen Tyndall. We're the 17th community foundation in New Zealand and the largest geographical community foundation in New Zealand, covering the whole of the Horizons region. Because of the complexity of that geography, we've spent pretty much all of the last 12 months working on really, I guess, the foundations of how Te Awa Community Foundation could be really effective in local communities throughout the region. And a real essence of community foundations is place-based giving, where people can give typically in the form of gifts in their wills, so that their generosity can support their community in perpetuity going forward. Community foundations have been operating all around the world for over 100 years and have been prevalent in New Zealand for the last 15 years. So it's well proven. And in times like we're in right now, those more established community foundations have had a really pivotal role in supporting their local communities, working alongside other key funders in the region, and being able to really foster and manage people's generosity, support their communities for needs that occur that aren't known. We don't know what the needs of our youth will be in the future, much as we didn't 20 years ago. We don't know how we might respond to future emergencies, much as we didn't 3 months ago. So community foundations are a way for people to consider how their legacy, how their long-lasting support of their community might be best managed. So a community foundation effectively holds funds that generates returns and makes grants for those returns. It also provides pass-through giving opportunities in times like emergency appeals, and can also get involved in special projects and partnerships with other community relations. What we are asking of Rangitikei District Council is to join other territorial authorities and to sign this in principle joint agreement, which simply says that we'll establish a dialogue and how the Te Awa Community Foundation can work with Rangitikei District Council to support place-based giving in the Rangitikei region. There's no financial commitment required. There's no human resource required. We simply want to begin a dialogue and a working relationship. It's our intention that once we've established an in principle relationship with each regional authority or local authority, that we'll establish a district fund and we'll establish a district committee. And we'll be happy to talk with the council on how that's best achieved. We have some models in place and it's built into our trust deed how they would typically work. And we would also create some Rangitikei District Council sub-branding to give a real sense for local supporters that it is in fact funding for their local community. Money's not being filtered away anywhere else. So we're very much working on that basis. Our organisation is all voluntary run at this stage. We do hope obviously to be able to be more productive in due course and be able to have support staff, but at this moment it's our trustees working tirelessly to make this work well. And we have just completed our stage 2 milestone with the Tyndall Foundation, which has released a second tranche of funding to help us continue with that work. I appreciate you were short of time, and I really just have appreciated the opportunity to create a really simple, I guess, context for the document that you've been sent. I understand you've also received a frequently asked questions page that came with that hopefully goes some way to explain more about community foundations. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Clive. My understanding is really you're waiting on our council meeting and that you have had other authorities already signed to this. We've had the signatures come through from the Horizons Regional Council and the Palmerston North City Council, and we've also had funding from the Tararua District Council to support an earlier piece of work that we concluded at the end of last year, which allowed us to get some foundational work done. So those are three authorities that have formally expressed their support. The Tararua District Council has made themselves a 10-year commitment to the principles of supporting a community foundation, which is where their initial support came from. But part of that support was that they strongly encouraged us to reach out directly to all of the other territorial authorities and try to encourage them to join with Tararua District Council in supporting a region-wide community foundation. We're not asking everybody to replicate the financial elements, but we are asking everyone to try and replicate the in-principle support of community foundations being effective in each district. Thank you very much. Councillors, do you have questions?
Just
question, Councillor Dave Wilson.
well, the question that I had, which I did have note here, which has been answered by Clive, and thank you for that. It's just good to hear that the money contributed to this foundation would be earmarked directly for our area. So is that my understanding? Is that what you're confirming there?
Correct.
Thank you.
Ultimately, these are effectively donor-advised funds to some degree. So if someone was to leave a gift in their will or to make an endowment, so there's a family looking at making a quite significant endowment into the community foundation at the moment, they have said, I would like to place this money with you in trust so that you can manage its purpose for me beyond my ability or my life. But I would like to see it used in this way or in this location or for this community. So to some degree, it may be that people in a certain community go more on a cause basis than a geography basis. But either way, ultimately, there's a conversation that occurs with each donor as they establish their gift to do that. What we do believe and what typically occurs over a medium-term period of, say, 5 to 10 years is that a community foundation establishes some inherent trust and credibility in a wider community, which is also part of the process of this joint agreement. And therefore, we encourage donors to give towards a general fund. And what a general fund allows, and that could be within the district fund as well. But when we allow donors and supporters to place money into general funds, it gives us a greater flexibility to respond to future unknown needs. And so ultimately, in the medium term, we would hope to be able to demonstrate trustworthiness, credibility, being a safe pair of hands, so that donors and supporters can contribute to funds that will be more flexible to meet future unknown needs. But to answer your question initially, should a donor want to work with the community foundation to do place-based giving, their funds and the proceeds from their funds cannot be used in other locations or for other purposes.
Thank you for the clarity.
Thank you. Further questions from councillors? Excuse me. So, Clive, are you presenting to some of the other authorities?
So I've reached out with the encouragement and support of Mayor Grant Smith and Mayor Tracy Collar. So I reached out directly to each of the mayors with this joint agreement, and I'm responding to each of them as they allow. Some of those in forms like this, and others are more direct conversations. So basically just responding to each mayor and their council as they see fit.
And this doesn't put any financial pressure at all on our council, does it?
No, there's no intention or expectation on the signing of this agreement that any financial commitment would be made. Obviously, it would be really helpful to get things moving ahead sooner rather than later. So should there come a time, and obviously now is not a great time for many councils, but should there come a time where the council would like to expedite community foundation outcomes, then we can certainly have that conversation. But there's not an immediate requirement or expectation. At this stage, we're looking for in-principle agreement.
Thank you very much. Councillors, I have a recommendation here that His Worship the Mayor, on behalf of the Rangitikei District Council, be authorised to sign the joint regional agreement with Te Awa Community Foundation. I will move that, seeking a seconder. Councillor Angus Gordon seeking it. I don't think I need to speak to this. I'll reserve a right of reply. Do any councillors wish to speak to it? No one has their hands up. So I'll put the motion to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hands. Councillor Ashton, thank you. Everyone is in favour. Motion is carried. Clive, thank you very much. Thank you for the initiative. Thank you for the work that you've been involved with. Please pass on our thanks to Sir Stephen Tyndall as well, and the other members of the Trust.
Thank you, I will. Thank you very much, councillors, for your support. We look forward to serving you well in the future. You're
welcome to be put back into the holding room that we have electronically, but I'll fully understand it if you decide to leave the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item I have is the financial snapshot, starting on your agendas at page 42. And I will pass over to our Chief Financial Officer, Joe Devine, to take us through this. Joe, are you online?
Yes, I am on.
Thank you. Nice to see you, Joe. Joe, can you take us through this and speak to it, please?
Thank you. I will take the paper as read. It's the financial snapshot as at the 31st of March. And I'm open to take any questions through the report.
Joe, earlier there was a typo that's been corrected, hasn't it?
That has been corrected. It was a transposition of figures in item 4.
Thank you very much.
I have had one question from councillors. It was in relation to the revaluation.
Thank you.
The significant variance that we see in depreciation. That was arose from doing the revaluation a year earlier. The revaluation was timetabled to be done at the 30th of June this year, but because every year we're required to do a fair value assessment of our assets, the Three Waters and the roading assets were seen to have material movement in fair value as we completed the annual report last year. Therefore, we went through the formal revaluation as per our accounting policies. So this year we're revaluing land and buildings, but we will not be doing the 3 waters and roadings unless there is a significant movement when we do the fair value assessment in June this year again.
Thank you, Joe. Are you happy to take questions from councillors?
Yes.
Further questions from councillors, please? Councillor Nigel Belsham.
Thank you, Your Worship. Reading the report, we're obviously still in a fairly strong position currently, but the biggest thing that sort of is highlighted through there is around our capital expenditure, and current year to date 9.787 million, with a compared budget of year to date of 22.26 million. Are we going to have a fairly clear idea of what those capital projects are going to be finished by the end of this financial year, and what we're going to be looking at carrying forward? Like, how soon is that going to be reasonably clear to present?
That will be presented at the May council meeting, which will be when we're looking at the next year's budget and the carry forwards and the projected completion dates of the capital programs.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess I see a lot of those projects, especially with our current situation we're in, will struggle to get done by the end of the year. So it's certainly going to be an impact on that capital spend.
Thank you, Joe. That deals with the question that I was going to ask as well. I should point out, since we're online, and I'll remind councillors that we are live screening, that Deputy Mayor Nigel Belsham is also the chair of our Finance Committee. Thank you. Further questions? I have one from Councillor Dave Wilson. Dave.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Joe. I do have one quick question, which I've had a couple of looks at it, and I apologise for not sending it through for you. So if you're unable to add clarity to this, then that's fine. In item number 9, it says roading and footpath variance of 4.03 million predominantly relates to land acquisition for emergency works, including the Turakina dropout. Is there any sort of a breakdown in that you can give some clarity around that number, or is that not something you're in a position to do right here and right now?
I wouldn't be in a position to do it right here and right now. Arno may be able to provide some insights to it.
Thank you, Arno. If you're online, that would be appreciated. My understanding was that a purchase of property was no longer required, that it was a build out and reinstatement rather than a purchase now. Arno, can you hear, please, and can you advise?
Yes, thank you. I agree with your comments. We change our minds a little bit. So most of that money would be involved in that repair of flood damage earlier. Although the exact breakdown, I also do not have the details of that on my fingers at the moment.
Follow-up question, Councillor?
Yeah, just a subsequent question to that. So there was potential of some land having to be purchased to do that repair. If that is no longer the case, then there was a budgeted item that as potential saving in there going forward in our capital works. Is that my understanding?
If I can reply, Your Worship, no, there is an alternative solution, and the cost of the alternative will be pretty similar to the cost of the original repair. So we think it will be cost neutral, and it will still cost about the same.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you. Just to point out for those that are listening online for the first time to council meetings, the capital works program, when we're referring to capital works that are being carried out this year, this financial year, they will be rated for in the next financial year, and that is the financial year that we are setting our annual plans for. Is that a fair synopsis, Joe?
Yes, it is.
would make the comment in terms of financial snapshot and the capital works that obviously we're going to have a lot of information come towards us in the next council meeting. A lot of the focus will also be on setting forward the long-term plan for the following year, which is a 3-year model. I'd ask the Chief Executive whether he wishes to make comment. No.
I think you meant a 10-year model for the long-term plan.
Yeah, it's a 10-year. So the long-term plan is a 10-year model, but is refreshed every 3 years. Any further questions? So we have a recommendation, which is, would somebody like to move the recommendation that the memorandum financial snapshot March to the meeting be received? Councillor Dunn moving, Councillor Carter seconding. Show of hands, those in favour. There's no one against. Motion is carried. Thank you. Looking to the next item, this is item number 10. It's developing a COVID-19 response package. The item starts in your agenda, councillors, on page 48. And I'll ask the Chief Executive, are you going to take us through this item, please?
Yes, I will, Your Worship. I will take the item as read. The item was proposed, the executive team looked at options that would help our community, and particularly those items that had were achievable within our current budget. The proposals that you will see within this paper are those that we feel are achievable without a detrimental effect to our budget for this year. There are additional ideas in there that we would discuss with council, and that, which I'm not sure if was actually sent out, was around the difference between rates remission and rates postponement. And I know that was a question that was asked by one of the councillors. So I'd be happy to, we have some answers for councillors that have been prepared, and Michael Hodder will report to those.
Thank you very much. Before we move to Mr. Hodder, please, I'd remind councillors that the opportunity is there for you to put other suggestions to council for consideration. I think it would be helpful if councillors gave some indication as to where they currently, their degree of comfort with the rate increases for next year. My understanding from the documents is proposed at 3.6%. Is that correct, Joe?
Yeah, yes, from the annual plan last year, rolling it forward, it was a 3.63% increase.
Thank you. So we'll come back to that. Mr. Hodder, do you wish to go to the questions that have been raised and the answers to it?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The question was why the council currently doesn't have a rates postponement policy. Now, the important thing to understand is that it's the difference between rates remission, which is where the rates are no longer paid, as distinct from rates postponement, where the payment is deferred. And what happens then is that if there's a rates postponement, then there'll come a time when all the rates that haven't been paid will be due. There are some councils that already have a rates postponement policy on an open-ended basis, such as Ruapehu. And what it means then is that the most likely outcome is when the property is sold, the rates will be due entirely with the council. Rates postponement can be a good option for residents who've got significant assets but a limited income, i.e. it's largely tied up in their own property. The reason why the council has not done this is twofold. One is that it amounts to lending, really, and it's seen it as being more the business of banks and financial institutions, and also because if it's taken up to any large extent, it has an impact on cash flow. There's no requirement to have a rates postponement policy. If council wishes to do that, it needs to consult on a draft policy, and that's done in section 82, done in terms of section 82 of the Local Government Act, which means it can be less than a month. One example, if council is of a mind to think about a draft policy, is having regard not only for Ruapehu's example, but also one which is being worked on by Horowhenua District Council right now. Horowhenua, like Rangitikei, hasn't had a rates postponement policy, but is considering one now on a quite limited basis. And the way it's limited is council has to declare an event or an emergency for the policy to come into place. So it's not going to be open-ended. The policy, therefore, would, if postponement is applied under the policy, then it's likely that the rates that have been postponed would become due 1 year after that council has decided that the impact of that event no longer applies. So there are two quite different models that you might want to consider if you look at this. But the key thing is that if you do want to do it, it will need to be consulted on. My suggestion would be that you resolve to have a draft policy in front of you for the 28th of May meeting. And from there, you could go out and consult on it, which would mean it would be in place for the new financial year. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. But I agree with you. It becomes another tool in the toolbox. As such, I've asked the Chief Executive to draft a potential motion for this council meeting. Do you have it?
I do. Can I just ask a question?
Certainly.
Michael, I'm about to propose a motion. Could I just trouble you to consider how that might impact the recommendations in 3.3 and 3.2 after I've said it. So the motion I suggest that is that in order to aid ratepayers financially affected by the COVID-19 national emergency, Council approve the development of a rates postponement policy for consideration at the May 2020 Council meeting.
So just before you answer, Mr. Hodder, my understanding would be then in developing that policy, that would give council the opportunity to include words such as case-by-case basis and delegating an authority to part of council rather than full council, but that would be work that would be investigated. Would you like to comment on both of those thoughts, Beth?
Well, the suggestion from the Chief Executive is fine in terms of getting a draft prepared. I think the question of the limits around how the policy is going to be administered and I suppose the scope of the policy is something that we need to put in front of you for the next meeting. For example, you may want to restrict its impact to residential properties and small businesses rather than every ratepayer. These are considerations which I think you need to think about at the next meeting rather than make a decision now.
Yeah, I think Mr. Hodder, we can do that work over the next month. Question from Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to say with that movement, just hearing what Mr. Hodder's just previously said, perhaps we could also say, rather than just COVID-19, that this could be in response to other events, council notified events.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. I share your interest. I think we're starting to jump ahead a little bit. There'll be a body of work that we need to do. I will get the Chief Executive to read back the motion that I will formally put as Mayor, and the motion reads.
To have COVID-19 on it. Okay. Considering Councillor Duncan's statement just now, the motion is that in order to aid ratepayers financially affected by national emergencies, Council approved the development of a rates postponement policy for consideration at the May 2020 Council meeting. Move the COVID-19.
I will so move, looking for a seconder to that. Councillor Ash is seconding. I will speak to it as the mover. I think it's another tool in the toolbox. And I would like to point out for those listening online that if somebody has a difficulty making a rate payment, routinely we ask them to talk to us. We're an authority that wants to work with our clients and would much rather see that conversation happen earlier rather than later. When payment plans have been put in place, with the normal processes that we've been able to not charge the penalty interest payment. So I will obviously speaking in support of the motion. There are other speakers. Are there any other speakers to the motion? If not, I will put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hands. We have everyone. Thank you. The motion is carried. There will be some renumbering of the recommendations, therefore, for this item. And so item recommendation 1 would be that the memorandum developing a COVID-19 response package to this meeting be received. I'll so move, looking for a seconder too. Thank you, Councillor Dave Wilson. Those in favour, please raise your hands. Everybody voting in favour. Motion is carried. That will mean that the recommendation motion that has just been passed becomes recommendation either 1A or 2. I'll leave that to staff to figure. Thank you. Would you like to take us through, the Chief Executive, would you like to take us through some of the, take questions around individual suggestions that we have made?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll do 2 things if I could to this item. The firstly is to take it as read and ask, are there any questions? And secondly, to ask councillors if they have any additions they would make to the initiatives.
Thank you. First of all, are there any questions? Councillor Nigel Belsham, question?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Reading through the report, there's some excellent suggestions on there, Peter, so thank you for putting that together. But I guess the one suggestion or recommendation out of which is 3.4, basing around the holding of the average rate increase. My feeling is to have it as low as possible. And I guess my question to you is, have projects been gone through that have been structured to be done next year? Have they been gone through by staff to ensure that they are absolutely required, or are there projects there that can be put off to the following year, or sweating the assets, so to speak, to try and get our costs down as low as possible? I'll just be curious around that. I noticed there's 2 projects that have been put into that recommendation around the funding of the Portorino landfill remediation and the 3 water strategy. But are there any other things that can be looked at by staff?
So, Councillor, my take from what your question is that you would be looking to move a recommendation that staff prepare a report looking at ways and consequences of putting forward a lower rate increase recommendation to the next meeting.
Yes, that would be correct. I certainly want to be ensured that we have gone through every projected project that's going to be taking place next year, so that we can ensure that they are definitely required, or whether we can shift them out. So yeah, I agree with your wording. If staff can come back to us with a report on what potential projects can be shifted and the consequences of that as well. So I'm happy to put that recommendation.
Thank you. Before we go to a seconder and make the recommendation live, I'll just take any questions from staff. The Chief Executive, do you wish to?
Thank you, Councillor, for that. One thing that I would seek from this meeting is that on one hand, we have an ability to do exactly as you've suggested, and to look at sweating assets, postponing capital works, etc., and therefore having a lower spend profile from council. At the other end of the scale, and I speak on behalf of, or not on behalf of, sorry, but having come from a meeting this week of other mayors and chief executives in our district, where some councils are saying that they want to stimulate the economy, and they believe that postponing those projects is not in their best interests. And I believe both of those decisions are open to our elected members. I just didn't want to, the two would struggle to coexist in any great form. We could do both, that is try and postpone capital works but still stimulate the economy, but you can understand that they're at somewhat opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yes, thank you. Just before I go back to you, Councillor, my mayor's report refers to this dilemma, but it would it be useful if we put some sort of figure around this? For instance, it may be useful for Joe, our Chief of Finance, to look at, for instance, if we move to a 2% rate position, so that we could do the figures around something fairly definite. So before I come back to you, Deputy Mayor Nigel Belsham, Joe, could you have a comment on that?
So we're currently working through all the projects, and they are coming back to council on the 28th of May, so we can, whatever decisions or issues that council would like us to look at, we can include in that report.
Thank you. Councillor Belsham, do you wish your motion to stand? Bearing in mind I have to find a seconder for it first. Councillor Dave Wilson, are you seconding?
I've actually got a question, if I may, Your Worship, with regards to this item.
Can we just wait until I've got a mover and a seconder? So we're
happy to second then to have the conversation.
You're seconding. Thank you. Councillor Belsham, do you wish to speak to it, or will you take questions first?
I'm happy to take questions, but I will speak to it.
Perhaps if you speak to it first. Councillor Belsham.
Okay. Thank you, Peter, for your comments there, and I certainly appreciate the economy and wanting to kickstart the economy. But I would expect that those consequences would form part of the report of looking at what projects we can delay, shift, whatever. But I would expect that the consequences of not proceeding with some of those projects would be that it could be detrimental to the economy or to our local economy. So yeah, as part of the report back to council, I would certainly expect that to be taken into account. But our ratepayers are going to be going through a very, very tough time, and I think we need to ensure, as elected members and guardians of this district, that we are ensuring that everything has been done absolutely possible to have as small an impact on our ratepayers throughout the district as we can. And I guess if we don't proceed with ensuring that has been done, then we haven't done our job. So I'm happy to leave it there.
Thank you. I'll take speakers to the motion. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I don't think anybody in this meeting today would go against Councillor Belsham's comments, but I would just err a little bit on the side of the caution. If we're going to be doing reports on this, we shouldn't lose sight of what the detrimental effects may well be. To postpone projects of some of the significant nature that we are faced with as a council will seldom give us any savings over a short to medium term. So I think it is a very, very fine balancing act with trying to manage a low or very, very modest rate increase. But the end result of that is the costs going forward do not stop, and they will not be getting any less. So I just err on the side of the caution, and caution if we are going to get a report, we get a full understanding of what the flip side of the consequences are of deferring some of these projects and going to a very, very low rate increase. We may end up costing us a significant amount of money in the longer term by delaying some of these projects. Just my comments.
Thank you very much. Councillor Angus Gordon speaking.
Yes, my comment is very, very similar to Councillor Wilson, and I'm pleased to see in the report in 3.4 there's a mention there of utilisation of debt funding to spread costs over long periods, and I'd like to see some thought around that given. We do run a very lean ship, and as such, there's not a lot to carve out, and most of our big capital spends are just that. They're big capital spends apart from running costs. So we might be able to sweat a road for a year and not seal or whatever, but we can't push it too far because we all know how lean we are. So I'm supporting the motion, looking forward to the report. Thank
you. While we're taking further questions, Councillor Belsham, have you actually got some words around this, or are you relying on staff here?
Thank you, Worship. I haven't got the recommendation fully written out in front of me, but if the staff could put something together, they certainly should understand the intent of the motion, and I'm happy to see it put back to us before it's put up for voting. So if the wording can be put together around the intention of ensuring we've covered all of the expenses heading into the next financial year, and ensuring that everything there has been gone over and made sure that it's an essential project.
Thank you, Councillor. We take your intent. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just that last sentence that Councillor Belsham said has basically put what I wanted to say in context. I'm just concerned that if we look at these projects, we really need to identify what's essential, as you were saying. The mention of putting roading away in a district like the Rangitikei concerns me, because that is our lifeblood for our large and agricultural based businesses, I suppose I'm talking about. So thank you. I think that was put.
Councillor Dalgety.
I'm just wondering, is it an option to consider rates on a quarterly basis? So maybe there's some relief just till the end of the year, but the next half of the financial year, it goes, back up to the 3.6 or whatever. Is that something that staff do consider?
I think we've virtually dealt with that in some of the previous stuff this afternoon in terms of rate deferment type policies. certainly we can look at that. Further questions from councillor? Further speakers to the motion? I think my chief executive has been drafting some words around the intent of your motion. Councillor Belsham, do you have them?
Yes.
Would you like to share them, please?
Yep. Proposed motion is that in order to minimise rates increases, staff prepare a report on capital projects that can be postponed and report back to the 28 May 2020 council meeting.
With a view to potential rate reduction.
Okay, well, I've said in order to minimise rates increases.
Okay, that's fine. Are you happy with that wording, Councillor Belsham?
Yes, I'm happy with that wording, and yeah, I think rather than get into debating what factors that's going to create for our district, we wait till the report comes back and then we can get into some debate from there. So yes, happy with that wording. Thank you.
It's the second of Dave Wilson. Are you happy, Councillor Wilson? Are you happy with that?
Yes, happy with the words and happy to continue to second.
Thank you. Any further speakers to the motion? I'll go back to a right of reply from the mover, Councillor Belsham.
No, I think we've said pretty much all that we need to about the intent of the motion, and I'm happy for it to be put.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. Those in favour, would you please raise your hands? Those against? We have everyone. Thank you. Staff, it would be useful, I think, in light of that motion to prepare some figures around what effect, for instance, a 2% rate position would be. That would give, in my opinion, some sort of guideline as to what you forego and what opportunities are lost. Thank you. We have a number of recommendations. Sorry, my computer's just gone offline. We have a number of recommendations and bullet points that have been produced in front of you. I have them here. And councillors, do you have access to all of them, starting from the bullet points? Small to medium businesses will be paid weekly following receipt of invoices rather than 20th. And there's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Councillors, do you want me to go through them each separately? Yes. Is that an indication you want to speak, Councillor Wilson?
Just happy to move as a block, Your Worship.
Councillor Gordon, are you seconding?
Correct. Seconding.
Councillor Wilson, do you wish to speak to the motion as a block?
Yes, I do. I think the Chief Executive and his management team have clearly been working hard on all these items to see savings for the council and certainly back to the ratepayers. But I think the previous motion, which was moved by Councillor Belsham and seconded myself, will bring out some additional information that we may be able to find further savings. So I think these are starters, and I think there will be more that we can find. But there's a significant amount more work to be done before we identify that. So I think all the initiatives that have been put in place in these recommendations that are moving as a block are a good place to start. So on the grounds of that, I'm moving it.
Thank you. We need a second or two. Thank you.
Seconded by Councillor Gordon.
Councillor Lambert by a smidgen over Councillor Ash. Any further speakers? Councillor Duncan.
I just want to speak for that because just reading through, especially the letter from the Local Government Business Forum, and I note that all the really good points that are made in there also are reflected in their recommendations. And I just want to say thank you very much for that excellent work as well. Thank you.
Any further speakers? Councillor Ash, followed by Councillor Lambert. Councillor Ash first.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank staff for the work that they've put into it. It seems to be well balanced across the district and across the different areas. However, I'd like to ensure we remain fairly flexible and agile. If there's something that we've missed out on, there may be something that community may be able to reflect back to us that could be added in at a later date.
Thank you. Councillor Lambert.
Kath sort of stole my thunder a bit there, but yeah, reiterating what he said, this is because it's uncharted waters for us. There's going to be great learnings to take out of this, and we will get a couple of things wrong, no doubt, but in a lot of ways, it's going to be a good grounding for any future events such as this to go from. And I think, yeah, it's a great starting point, and yeah, congratulations on all the work done to it. I think it's good, very good.
Further speakers, Councillor Gordon, followed by Councillor Panapa. Councillor Gordon.
Yes, I'd like to back up Councillor Lambert's comments there. I think this is a real learning experience for everybody. I note the first bullet point, looking to pay small businesses on a weekly basis. I mean, that's a change of process for us. And I know there will have to be checks and balances around it, but, in the current situation, bill payment is the lifeblood for a lot of businesses. So well done for stepping up to that plate. And I'll just leave it there. Oh, I'm looking forward to the wash up at the end, actually, because this, I think for local government as well as business, this is going to be a real change point, a tipping point for many. And I think probably we've all had time to reconsider how we run our lives, how we do our businesses, how we operate. And I think there'll be some real learnings out of that. So I think this is the beginning of that process. So looking forward to it.
Thank you. We have had more than 3 speakers in favour. I'll waive standing orders. Councillor Panapa, I'll let you speak.
Just to support the comments that have already been made in regard to the robust procedures or processes that the staff have taken to look into these matters and provide the information for us to make good decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go back to you, Councillor Wilson, right a reply.
Yes, very briefly. Thank you to my fellow councillors for the support. Councillor Ash has just made something very quick, and I do appreciate that. It is a fluid situation. We don't know what the needs are going to be, and they will be unfolding. So as long as we are mindful of that and we can keep a position where we can move quickly, should an opportunity for us, for our ratepayers, present itself, I think that's important. So thank you.
I now must put the motion to the vote. A show of hands, those in favour. I have everyone. Motion is carried. Councillors, before we proceed, there's been a variety of other options around councils, neighbouring councils, for instance, around either zero rate increases or writing to remuneration authorities. This is not something that I'm suggesting or recommending, as outlined in my Mayor's report, but this is your opportunity now if you wish to go down those sorts of paths. Thank you. We'll move on. Excuse me. Move on to recommendation 3, that the Chief Executive provide a report to the 28th of May meeting on how the provisions in Council's rates remission policy for remitting rates on the grounds of financial hardship could be applied in response to COVID-19. I also move, seconded by Councillor Ash. I don't think I need to speak to this. Are there any questions? I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour, raise your hands. Those against, carried. Thank you. Everyone in favour. And 4, that the draft 2021 annual plan for consideration at Council's meeting on 28th of May 2020 considers how this year's average rate increase of 3.63 can be maintained into 2021 rather than the 5.31% increase projected in the long-term plan. My feeling is that this has already been covered effectively by the motions that have already been put. I would like to scrub that recommendation 4 that's currently sitting in the order plan. Chief Executive?
I just wonder if Joe or Michael would want to comment on that.
So can I have comment, please, from Mr. Hodder or Mr. Byrne?
In relation to, I think it's important that we're recognising the looking at intergenerational costs, which could mean that we would have a deficit budget next year, because we will incur the Portorino, if we incur Portorino landfill costs, we'll be loan funding for that, but the council would be showing a deficit in the 2021 financial year. So I do think that's an important one to leave as a well, important one to note, and we could include it in the paper of 28 May.
I absolutely accept the position you put forward, and I'll revise my decision. So I would like to move that the draft 2021 annual plan for consideration at council's meeting on 28th of May 2020 considers how this year's average rate increase of 3.63% can be maintained into 2021 rather than 5.31% increase projected in the long-term plan, by recognising as intergenerational costs and thus funding through debt the remediation of the historic Portorino landfill and the Three Waters strategy. I will so move. Looking for a seconder, Councillor Gordon. Seconding, I take on board that some of the motion would be covered by earlier items, but the intergenerational effect is quite important. Speakers 2, Councillor Belsham.
It's a question of the motion, actually. So by locking in, we've made a statement there of considering the 3.63% rate increase to be maintained. Are we preempting something there prior to a report that we even receive at the next council meeting? I just wonder whether we need that figure in there, whether we actually show that our intent is to actually reduce the percentage increase from 5.31% that was signalled in the 2018-2028 long-term plan. But by putting a figure in there, we're sort of almost preempting, aren't we, what we're going to set that figure at?
Yes, would you be happy to move an amendment to remove the figures or to include the intent?
Yeah, the intent to reduce rather than specifying the percentage of increase, just some wording around the intent to reduce the projected figure of 5.31%.
Thank you. Staff, could I have some comment around that, please?
Joe?
So we will be working through the model and looking to do the reduction. So I'd recommend that the draft annual plan that we would, without putting a figure, but we would reduce the 5.31. And I think the key messages in it is the intergenerational costs and the debt funding. So my advice would be just to get rid of the 3.63%.
Thank you.
I'm happy to move an amendment if that's required to remove that signal to 3.63% down to the reduction. So if the wording's put in there to do that, I'm happy to move that as an amendment.
I'm happy just to have the motion changed if the seconder is happy to remove the figure. I think, was it Councillor Ash, were you the seconder?
Quite happy.
Councillor Gordon, thank you.
Can we read out This is more than just a number.
Yeah. So we'd need to go back to the motion. So it would read that the draft 2021 annual plan for consideration at council's meeting on the 28th of May 2020 considers how this year's average rate could be reduced into 2021 rather than the 5.31% increase projected by recognising, etc., intergenerational effects. Councillor Gordon, you're happy to second as such? Thank you. Staff?
Just to be clear, Your Worship, you didn't use the ending of that sentence, but you're presuming it's exactly as read.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct. Any speakers to the motion? The motion is carried. Without a formal motion, I'd also like, Joe, your comments around what work could be done on the depreciation schedule at the same time, whether there's any influence that could be brought into either the annual plan or long-term plan consideration. I'm not sure the motion around that, but your comments, please.
We're definitely looking at that because we are facing the impact in the 2021 year of the significant increase in value of the three waters and roading. And as you see, this year we're running a our depreciation is significantly higher, and we're looking at what we can do to balance out the rate funding of that next year. So that's one of the options we will be coming back with. We'll be also, as we go into the long-term plan, looking at the depreciation policies as a start to the modelling, because they would need the long-term plan because they could be significant changes.
Thank you very much. I'll appreciate if that work can be done as part and parcel of the looking at the annual plan and long-term plan. But I don't think I need a motion. I understand that you may well be doing that work. Thank you. That brings us to the end of that item. The next item is the item 11, the establishing of a new mayoral relief fund trust in response to COVID-19. And this starts on page, I think, page 59. Would somebody like to move, first of all, the recommendation that the report be received? Councillor Dalgety, Councillor Wilson. Those in favour, please raise your hands. Presumably, because you've seconded it, Councillor Dalgety, will take it as given. Carried, thank you. I will move, so it's up for item for discussion, that council establishes a Rangitikei Mayoral Relief Fund Trust for COVID-19. That puts the item on the agenda. Councillor Belsham, you're seconding. Thank you. The reason I'm moving this is, first of all, I think that we need some local capacity, and we'll take questions around the report way before we get into a vote. I have had some people coming to me and some organisations coming to me saying that we would consider financially supporting this, and I will take questions around the report before we move further.
There were some questions.
Questions from councillors? I think we had a couple of suggested questions. Councillor Gordon?
Your Worship, my question is, should the formation of the trust be limited to COVID-19? you know, it's my observation that every 2 or 3 years we have some event of some sort in this district where the wheels try to fall off, and yourself and council and others generally step into that ring. So my question is really, is it more administratively simple to have a trust that's for a specific event, or should we have a trust that actually has broader horizons and could cover other events in the future?
My advice to council would be, at the moment, I would leave it as COVID-19. And the reason for that, it's more likely then to be able to attract external funding, especially from government and major funders.
Thank you.
I did consider that as an option. Councillor Ash, you've got a question?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I guess my question is, I've got a couple of questions. One question is, would the funders that have suggested they'd be interested in contributing to a fund, would they consider at a similar level contributing towards the Wanganui Community Foundation at a same level, if we were to go the Community Foundation direction? My second question would be, do we know if we were to set up a Merrill fund for the COVID response, how that may impact beneficiaries from the Wanganui Community Foundation COVID response? Would they focus their attention, if we had a response for the Rangitikei, would the Wanganui Community Foundation therefore focus their intention on other areas, not the Rangitikei?
No, my understanding is that we'd still, organisations and individuals in our district would still be able to apply to the Community Foundation without any thought of prejudice, if you like, because we had something local. Other councils, including Wanganui, in the past have had this sort of Merrill Relief Fund as well.
Thank you.
I guess one of the questions I'd have is, I have taken the either option in the Inland Revenue Department for donate status rather than a charitable relief trust fund under a charitable trust. Mr. Vine, would you like to comment on your preference for those two options?
Look, I'm not an expert in this in any way. I don't think I'm in a position really to say which would be the most preferred.
Okay, we'll need to come to that further in the recommendations. But essentially, Mr. Hodder, do you have a view?
Yes, I do, Your Worship. I think going for a charitable status makes it very clear. While you've made it clear that people are willing to donate, it's also important that people get the benefit of donating and get the know that they're going to get some reward back from it. I think it just elevates the status of the trust. What I can't tell you, I'm afraid, is how long it will take for charitable services to process the application. Like the council, they're closed, and I haven't had a definitive reply as to how long it would take to do the work.
Okay. Thank you. I had a question from Councillor Ash. Councillor?
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess my question is, why would you be, what is your thoughts around going for the either motion, as in going for the donee status with IRD? My understanding is, while there is potentially more reporting required through the registered charities platform, it does, going through the charities actually opens you up for being able to apply to more places for money if you were to apply for other organisations, something that you may not be available to you if you're just under the donee status under the IRD. So I guess that's my question: is why would you be looking at the first motion as opposed to the charitable day?
I think we can certainly come back to this. Councillor Dalgety, you had your question, hand up for a question.
Yes, I was just interested in some feedback of your experience in 2004. Was there a downside of the Merrill Fund? Were there any challenges that you faced and any learnings from that we need to think about?
Thank you. In 2004, there were two different funds. There was a regional fund that was administered through Horizons, and government fed fairly heavily into that fund. And there was a far smaller Merrill Relief Fund set up by a number of councils. I guess the thing that came out of all of those sessions was the need for local knowledge, and that's something that is referred to in the report.
Thank you. And can I assume that someone can still apply to the community foundation even if we don't support it?
Correct. That was a question that's already been asked by Councillor Ash, so the answer is yes.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just for the purposes for councillors, in 2004, donations totalled $590,000, 120,000 of which came from central government, and there were over 300 applications that were considered in 2004.
Thank you. That was the regional fund. I was a representative on some of those funds as well. Let's go back a section. So the motion was that first of all, the council establishes the Rangitikei Merrill Relief Fund Trust in some form. I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? Thank you. We have everybody carried. The next motion that if a Merrill Relief Fund Trust for COVID-19 is agreed to, the proposed trust deed as amended or without amendment be adopted and executed in accordance with the Council's delegation register with His Worship the Mayor, the Deputy Mayor and the Chief Executive or his nominee being three of the trustees, with the other three trustees being representatives of iwi, business and welfare organisations, to be selected by Her Worship the Mayor and the Chief Executive, and with those names included on the trustee. So in the attachments, there is a copy of that potential proposed trust deed. I will move that without amendment. Are you seconding, Councillor Wilson? Or you?
Yes. No. Yes. Seconding, Your Worship, and yes, without amendment.
Thank you very much. Take questions. Do councillors feel as though we have the right mix sitting making those decisions? Bearing in mind these decisions would not be made by full council. One of the reasons for doing this is to maintain some degree of industry iwi engagement, but also some degree of confidentiality. I'll take questions. Councillor Ash, question?
Yeah, sorry, can I just, my sound keeps on cutting out over here. The list of people to sit on the trust. Could you repeat who they were?
Sorry, can you just repeat the question, Councillor Ash?
Yes, sorry, I don't know if you can hear me. My sound does keep on cutting in and out. Are you able to list again, please, the people that you would anticipate sitting on the trust, please?
I do have some people in mind, but that's not something that I'd like to raise in a public meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't think that's appropriate. Any further questions? Right, I'm not going to use a right of reply. I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? That's everyone. Thank you very much. Carried. And 4, that if the mayoral relief is agreed to, then the Chief Executive arrange an application to, and it's an either or, but perhaps that could be re-put to that if a Rangitikei Mayoral Relief Fund Trust for COVID-19 is agreed to, the Chief Executive will arrange for a suitable application to either the charity under the Charities Act or a donee status with IRD. That would give staff some opportunity to investigate the options around that. I'll pass the Chief Executive for comment around my thoughts.
I'm happy to look at that. Ostensibly, it just gives us the staff the ability to examine which is the most beneficial.
I'm happy to so move. Is there a seconder to that? Councillor Gordon, seconding. Questions? No, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you, that's everyone. That motion is carried. 5, and this will be an item of discussion, that's subject to one of the applications in the previous resolutions to be specified, council grant, and it would be a dollar figure to either the Rangitikei Mayoral Relief Fund Trust and to publicise the existence of the trust and invite donations. So we'd be removing the or section of that. So I'm wanting somebody to move that motion with a suggested figure to kick that fund off. Councillor Wilson, Councillor Belsham. Councillor Wilson first.
Question, if I may, Your Worship. I'm certainly fully in support of getting this this Mayoral Relief Fund up and running and as quickly as possible, and the work that council staff are going to do. But I wonder if it's prudent to be putting a number into this now when we're going to be looking at some sort of other document on the 28th of May with regards to our potential rating position, some potential savings in some capital works programs. And I just wonder if, as a part of that body of work, we may be able to formulate a number that we can put into this space. I'm not sure that we can do that right now without having that other information as to where the costs and savings may be. Just putting that one out there for comment.
The two options, as I see it around that, one is to put in a nominal figure so that it is set up and opened, or to put in a more substantial figure, which then encourages other organisations to contribute to. As I said, I do have some other organisations or individuals that are looking to also fund this, but they'd probably also be looking for some leadership from council. Councillor Belsham, followed by Councillor Duncan, followed by Councillor Hera. Councillor Belsham.
Thank you, Worship. It was a question more based around the previous Mayoral Relief Fund that operated for the 2004 floods. And when that was instigated, it obviously attracted some central government funding. I guess the council at the time, was it a nominal figure put in there to get the trust operational and then asking for a traction of funding towards it? Or did council at the time put in a significant figure?
My memory was, and I stand to be corrected, but my memory was council did not put in a substantial figure. You're talking about a fund that was set up really by government. So there was 2004, there was a governmental response to the floods, in exactly the same way that there was another one in 2013 or 2015. Their response periods that I have more memory of, because I was part of that parcel of distribution with Horizons at that stage.
Thank you. My personal opinion would be that we have a nominal figure put in there to start this trust up. And then after some certainty from the report to the 28th of May council meeting, we may come back with a figure that we're prepared to put in to help support the community. But yeah, it's challenging. I take on Councillor Wilson's comments that we could be taking from one hand and giving to the other innocuously. So I think to get the trust fund started, I don't know what sort of figure, but if it was 5,000, something like that, to get the trust fund started. But you know, that's my comment and my thoughts.
It's funny, Councillor Belsham, when you were starting to speak, I turned to the Chief Executive and I looked at him and I said 5,000 ? So we both made the comment at exactly the same time. Councillor Duncan, I think you were next.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is, where is this money coming from, whether it's nominal or not, to get it kick-started? Which little pot are we dipping into?
So if we move, for instance, the sum of $5,000, it would be an unbudgeted expenditure. And that's routine. You know, quite often we will spend money that's not sitting within a budget because, for instance, we had no knowledge that COVID-19 was going to exist when that budget was set. As frequently happens, and you'll be well aware of the costs around Putorino that we've put into our budgets. They are substantial costs and they were unbudgeted figures.
Thank you. Sorry.
Can you go again, Councillor Duncan?
Thank you. So there isn't actually an emergency fund of any description at the moment?
No.
Thank you.
Councillor Hera.
Kia ora, everybody. I'd just like to tautoko and support Councillor Wilson's initial kōrero around this, and also around the whole thing of the 5,000. I think it's a nominal amount is the way to go for us to start off with, and then go from there if it's just to start the whole fund off. So I would be supporting of the last of Councillor Dave Wilson's initial recommendation.
So, Councillor, would you be happy to move a motion with the figure of $5,000 as the sum?
Yes. Sorry, I wasn't sure if you were speaking to me, but yes, I'd be happy to move that, unless that was, I'd be happy to move 5,000 as the nominal amount.
I'll come back to you in a second, Councillor Dunn, or looking for a seconder. Councillor Belsham, you're seconding. Thank you.
Great.
Councillor Dunn, you had a question?
Is it because you want to open it now, we cannot to get these other funders involved, that you don't want to wait till the next meeting?
I don't want to wait, principally because I have interest from funders that are wanting to contribute too.
I thought as much. Thank you.
Councillor Herrard, do you wish to speak to your motion?
I'd just like to say that in lieu of us being in alert level 3 now, I don't think we actually can wait. I think it needs to, I'd hate for us to wait for another month, and I think it needs to be, this is our first proper meeting since the close down, and I think we're still right in the midst of it, and it's the type of issue in my mind that needs to be, it needs to get started now, not when potentially it's at the end of it. Well, to be honest, I don't know whenever the end of it's going to be, but yeah, I think another month. I don't believe we need to be waiting another month.
Thank you, Councillor. I share your sentiment. Further speakers? Councillor Dalgety.
I agree. Mr. Hodder mentioned that we don't know how long it's going to take to set up, so I think we should proceed with getting it on the table.
Thank you. Right, I'll put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Motion is carried by everyone. Thank you. I must say, we all seem to be on the same page today. Brilliant. Thank you. The next item is the water-related services bylaw deliberation, and this starts on page 80 with recommendations on page 82. Mr. Arno, are you going to take us through this, Mr. Benedict?
No, it would be George.
Okay, thank you. Which are you online?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you very much. Could you take us through this item, the water-related services bylaw deliberations, please?
Yes. Firstly, thank you, Worship. Firstly, I might just turn my camera off as well, so I'll just turn mine off now. Yes, so sorry. Just been cutting in and out quite a wee bit. So there were no submissions received. There has been that was brought up after public consultation, and that was just around the first paragraph for the purpose of the bylaw. So the purpose statement, just that first paragraph was raised that it probably could have been worded a little bit better, and that's the wording that's been put in front of yourself and Mr. Beggs. So Bonnie has that. Again, my internet's not going at the moment, so if she could just forward that around to the other elected members to see.
Thank you, George. In light of the difficulties, I think I'll pass to the Chief Executive for the change.
Or could you possibly please?
I think you are struggling, so I'll pass to the Chief Executive for the words around changes under the draft. This starts on page 84.
Yes. Thank you, Your Worship. On page 84, purpose. This hasn't been changed in the document you see. It is proposed to change it, the first sentence, to say the purpose of this bylaw is to provide safe and efficient public water supply, wastewater, stormwater, and land drainage systems, to encourage economical use of these systems, to protect the associated infrastructure, and to ensure council's compliance with resource consents associated with these systems.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any difficulty with the changing of the words around the purpose? No. Does anybody have any questions around the intent of the changes to the water-related services bylaw? It's quite a lengthy document. I will take it as tabled, and the changes to the previous bylaw have been highlighted. But essentially, and staff may wish to comment in a minute, essentially this makes some changes in recognising some of the drainage throughout our district where council feeds into what was then previously regarded as a private drain, and they become council drains that we're responsible for. But any further comment from staff?
I have no further comments on that, if you can hear me.
I'll pass to the Chief Executive who wishes to make some further comments around the water-related bylaw.
One of the drivers to the change in purpose is around the encouraging economical use of the systems. We do have some people who we meter, and there are times that we get feedback from that it's not equitable and other claims. So that the driver behind the economical use is to ensure that we are trying to ensure that excessive use is minimised and is levied accordingly.
So I'll come back to you in a second, Councillor Wilson. So presumably you are referring to the definitions around what is an extraordinary user. I don't wish to change the definition of extraordinary user. I just want to make sure that the application of the bylaw is clear that we are trying to preserve or to ensure economical use. Thank you. Councillor Wilson, you had a question?
Not a question, just a request, and if it's not too much trouble, could I just hear the purpose reread, please? There was quite a detailed change there. I'd just like to hear that reread.
Thank you.
The purpose of this bylaw is to provide safe and efficient public water supply, wastewater, stormwater, and land drainage systems, to encourage economical use of these systems, to protect the associated infrastructure, and to ensure council's compliance with resource consents associated with these systems. I understand you've just been sent an email with those words.
Councillor Ash, question? You'll have to unmute, Councillor, please.
Yeah, sorry. Just wondering, so does it therefore remove the line there, the sentence, this includes discharges of trade waste to the council's wastewater system? Does it retain that that wording? And I guess the query I've got in my head is the wording as you've put it going to sufficiently look after the environment as well? We're talking about infrastructure, but maybe whether or not wording around environmental protection could be included in that.
Do you wish to reply to the council?
There are 2 points there. The first one, I'll just ask Mr. Hodder, does he believe that the sentence in the original purpose document, which is this includes discharges of trade waste to the council's wastewater system, if that is to remain?
Given the question from Councillor Ash, would seem a good idea to retain it, just for absolute clarity.
With respect to the question on environmental protection, I could add a word in there if you, a suggestion. I would, again, forgive me because it's a long sentence, but I would insert that to encourage economical use of these systems to protect the associated environment and infrastructure.
Does that satisfy you, Councillor Ash? Thank you. I've got a thumbs up. Councillor Belsham.
Yeah, just a statement under purpose, the second paragraph, does that not basically make a statement about the having to require to comply with the Horizons 1 plan, which would cover all environmental aspects? And I guess that still retains, that still is retained in the bylaw. I guess staff comment would be required. But my understanding is that makes a statement around the environmental standards.
Do you see a difficulty having environment words added specifically in? I take your point that they are covered under the one plan, but Councillor Ash, I think, has raised a reasonable amendment to the purpose.
Yeah. No, I don't have any difficulty with the inclusion of discharge of trade waste to the council's wastewater system and that being part of the new purpose. No concerns there, but I'm just making I guess a point that already within that, in that second paragraph, actually covers the environmental standards that are required.
Okay, I take your point. So, Councillor Ash, does any councillor have a difficulty with specifically environmental concern, those sorts of words included? No, I think that we can leave that to staff to slightly change the purpose along those lines. Right, we'll go back to page 82. Councillors in dealing with the recommendations. First of all, would somebody like to so move the receipt of the report? Councillor Duncan, were you moving? Or were you asking to speak?
Sorry, Your Worship, I did have one more question.
Okay, can we just, first of all, I'll just deal with the receipt of the report. Somebody like to move the receipt? Councillor Jane Dunn, seconded Councillor Belsham. Those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you. That motion is carried. Your question, Councillor Duncan.
I was just confused at the end of that whether Councillor Ash's inclusion or agreement of inclusion with the word environment was what we were actually left with, or whether we were going back to include the sentence including the trade waste.
No, trade waste would be included. So perhaps I'll ask the Chief Executive to reread the motion.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, it's not a motion, it's just the purpose as part of the document.
Okay, so the full new paragraph to replace the first paragraph will be the following. The purpose of this bylaw is to provide safe and efficient public water supply, wastewater, stormwater, and land drainage systems, to encourage economical use of these systems, to protect the associated environment and infrastructure, and to ensure council's compliance with resource consents associated with these systems. This includes discharges of trade wastes to the council's wastewater system.
Does anybody have an opposing view? Right, we'll park that at the moment. And does anybody have any views around the changes to the bylaw? Some of them are quite are merely technical in nature. For instance, the fire emergency New Zealand has been replacing the rural fire service, etc.
Your Worship,
Councillor Carr,
should read fire and emergency.
sorry, should what?
Read fire and emergency.
Yes. I can take that as a given. Any further changes around the intent of this bylaw change? Bearing in mind that it has come in front of you councillors before and has gone out for consultation. So there's been a number of steps that this has already been through. Councillor Belsham?
I'd be happy to move the second recommendation that the Water Related Services bylaw is formally adopted with the amendments just made and publicly notified.
Thank you very much. Looking for a seconder too. Councillor Dalgety, you're seconding. Thank you. Do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, happy for it to be put. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers to the motion? Right, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. We now go to the item regarding Taihape Grandstand, page 98. And I guess this is an item that there will be a series of mixed views on. Ms. Prince, are you online?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Your Worship.
Would you like to take us through this item?
Yes. Just before I start, I've had a couple of questions from councillors. So just to clarify, the letter referred to in paragraph 1.1, which was the letter from Taihape Heritage Trust tabled as a late item to Assets and Infrastructure on the 19th of March. That was received by council via email on the 18th of March. The second question was in relation to the earthquake risk chimney and whether that had been programmed for removal. It was due to be removed at the beginning of April, and that has been rescheduled and will now be removed sometime next week. Thirdly, I have just become aware that a heritage report has been done on the Taihape Grandstand in 2009. I haven't seen that report, but I will endeavour to locate that. And finally, a letter is tabled today from the Taihape Heritage Trust. They have advised that now that the proposal for the new amenities building on Memorial Park is a standalone toilet shower block, they would like to see this reinstated as part of and within the existing footprint of the grandstand. The trust also seeks an extension to pause the building of the new proposed amenities block and has advised that they would welcome the opportunity to lead a working party to consider the long-term preservation of the grandstand. And I'm happy to take the report as read.
Thank you, councillors. Is there anybody that has not received the table document from Taihape Heritage Trust? No, I'll take it then.
Question for me, when was that emailed and who did it come from?
Sorry, I'm not sure what specifically, are you talking about a table document? Yeah. I'll just have a...
Emailed from Bonnie yesterday.
Yeah, but that wasn't a question. Excuse me, I'll just check.
Sorry, councillors, we're just trying to get this right and check when you received.
So in answer to Councillor Gordon's request, question, sorry, the subsequent letter was received yesterday by email to myself, Northern Ward councillors and the Mayor, which is the document that's been tabled. And I received the subsequent email this morning to say that this letter, the document received yesterday, supersedes the letter that you see in the online report. I asked the author of the email, does she want the original letter rescinded? And she said no, it's to be superseded, however, by the requests made in the table document.
Thank you, councillor. Does that answer your question? Councillor Gordon, you'll have to unmute. I've got to, thank you.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
All right, let's go first of all for the simple one. Would somebody like to move the receipt of these reports as group? Councillor Duncan, Councillor Gordon, moving, seconding. I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour, those against, carried. That's just purely the receipt of the report. Ms. Prince, do you wish to speak further to the report?
No, thank you, Your Worship. I'll take it as read.
Take questions around the report.
Yes.
Questions from councillors around the report? I thought I'd see a flurry of hands here. All right, so that we're speaking to a motion, is somebody prepared to put a motion, the recommendation as it sits in your order paper 4.2, that council confirm the construction of the new amenities building on Taihape Memorial Park, which does not imply an intent to demolish the grandstand to avoid the cost of seismic strengthening. Is anybody prepared to put that motion? Councillor Gordon, are you so moving? Can you unmute?
Your Worship, I would move that motion with a slight amendment.
Can you, it wouldn't need an amendment because it'd become your motion.
Okay, right. So what I would like to move, when I can get my, that council confirm the construction of the new amenities building on the Taihape Memorial Park. Oh, where are we? I'm just trying to open my attachment here. And what we need to put after Memorial Park at the tennis court site, and that it does not imply the intent to demolish, etc. So it's really just adding in at the tennis court site into what people see in front of them in 4.2.
Looking for a seconder to this, and then I'll talk about the repercussions of the motion against the tabled document. Councillor Hira, are you seconding? So it's up for discussion. Just bearing in mind, and before I go to you as a move of the motion, when discussing this motion, you'll have to take on board the request from the Heritage Trust, which is, I think, the third paragraph down, which seeks an extension of the pause on the building of the new amenities block. In other words, if you support this motion, the motion is passed, then effectively the reply to the Taihape Heritage Trust is that there will be no pause. Right. So, Councillor Gordon, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yes, I do. I'll pick up on the point you've just made, Your Worship. Effectively, we haven't paused. We have, a month ago, we said that due to the COVID-19 situation, we wouldn't be rushing into the next round of the design phase because we physically just couldn't do it. But when that change, or when the COVID-19 situation eases, we will be moving into it. Look, I'm fully, I want to make the point, I'm fully in support of where the Heritage Trust is coming from in terms of preservation of that building. And I'm not against that. But what I am wanting to make sure happens is that we start this build on the park for all the park users. Effectively, if we were to enter into the sort of agreement that the Heritage Trust would like to see, we would be starting the process all over again. And in my opinion, we would be unlikely to start anything on the park before the end of this triennium. It's just the reality. The situation's been going on for close on 10 years. So that's why I inserted the 4 words that I wanted to see inserted. I still wish to see this build start, and we've gone from a 2-story proposal down to a 1-story proposal. Ultimately, we're building this amenity to service people. And unfortunately, I think the Heritage Trust have the view that the people should service the old amenity, and they are 2 totally different things. And so, you know, we build assets to help people. I'll just leave it there, and I'll have a writer reply at the end.
There's a high degree of public interest in this, so councillors, I will give all of you the opportunity to speak to this. Seeking further speakers. Councillor Hera.
I'd like to support the motion that's been put forward by Councillor Gordon. I want to say I totally support. I don't see it as an either or, and I think it's an and. And if we look at it in a way, the Taihape community has spent many years finally getting where we've finally been able to say we are going to be building something. And I don't think that, I believe that we're able to do things. If there's another entity that's out there, the Taihape Heritage Trust, that are willing to put their brains together and look at picking up the Taihape grandstand, I think that they should be given the opportunity to do that. But it shouldn't be, in my opinion, to the detriment of stopping the building. And like Councillor Gordon has said, if we actually even step into this, it's not going to be anything that happens tomorrow. It's probably, we're going to be lucky if anything gets off the ground in the next 2 years. And taking on board everything that's been spoken about in regards to what our focus is going to be in spending for the council, I think it's going to give time. I think our community does need to have some confidence that we are going to be going forward, but I don't believe it's an one or the other situation. I think it can be happen that we do an and thing. So that's my thoughts around it. Kia ora.
Further speakers? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, speaking in support of Councillor Gordon and the extra words that he is looking to put into it. One of the biggest frustrations is, of course, that we won't get started on this tomorrow or next week, and it's one of the bigger frustrations of council that it takes so long to get things done. And I would certainly like to think that we do have a nice new toilet block and amenities on Memorial Park well and truly before the end of this triennium. So I'm very much in support of pushing on with where we're at, but I support the letter from the Community Trust to the extent that if they would be looking to take that up as a further project with council support, then that's a completely different matter. I think we push on with the project that we've got, indicating that that does not mean the demolition of the grandstand. So supportive of Councillor Gordon's motion.
Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor Belsham.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be speaking in support of this motion. Having been on council now and seen this project on the go for quite some time, I think Councillor Wilson reflected back on delaying project and works, and the costs going up and up and up. And I guess if we put a delay on this, excuse me, it's going to end up escalating in price again. So we have heard from a large amount of Taihape residents, and there has been communication happen with those groups. And I believe they've supported Councillor Gordon's stance on where the position was to be, and it supports all park users. So that's my support in favour of this this recommendation. Let's get on and get moving and look after the community in Taihape and give them some decent changing rooms in an area for that park to utilise.
Further speakers, Councillor Dalgety, followed by Councillor Lambert. Councillor Dalgety. Can you unmute, please, Councillor?
My apologies. I support Angus's motion, Councillor Gordon's motion, and the comments of the previous councillors.
Councillor Lambert.
Yes, pretty much in keeping with what's being said here. I think it's really important we get underway and get this building built, the amenities block. The preservation of the grandstand should be a Taihape community standalone project for them alone. I mean, it's been muted here about the same way the Huntable Town Hall Trust was set up. I think that would be a good line for them to go down. But it should be made pretty clear that there's no way the grandstand would be renovated to the point of trying to put the amenities block back in the grandstand. That would just be madness.
Further speakers? Councillor Duncan. Can you unmute, please, Councillor? We can't hear you. Could you unmute, please, Councillor?
Sorry, it wasn't responding, but now I am. Thank you. So thank you very much, everyone, for your comments. I would like to speak against that motion put by Councillor Gordon. I think it's unnecessary to put that extra wording in, because at the moment, the motion that is on the table that is agreed to by council includes the fact that it is in a council's preferred site, which is at the end of court number 4. So it's unnecessary to add those extra words. I would also like to say that I seriously believe there is a natural pause here, and acknowledging this group, which I endorse, would be a sign that council is open and listening to their community. And ever since I've been on council, of course, that has been identified to me as a strategic risk, that we are seen as not listening to our communities. So in that respect, I have been made to see from their perspective that they are representing a large amount of the community. And obviously I would like to speak again in their support of them, and to support the thought that we would work with them, given that we can't actually proceed with anything at the moment anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll speak to the motion. I will support the motion. I think the one thing that council has been poor about in dealing in Taihape is actually making a decision. The last thing that I want to see this is to go another 3 or 4 years without the rugby guys and the others on that end of the park having decent changing facilities. It's incredibly poor if a rugby union says we don't want to come to your district to play because of the conditions are substandard. So I will support the motion. I take on board Councillor Duncan's comments around the Majestic Theatre and the work they've done. And I would suggest, Councillor, that you move a motion along the lines of supporting the Trust in their endeavours with regard to the grandstand. And you might want to think about the wording around that. But I'll speak in favour of the motion, and I'll move any further speakers. Otherwise, I'll move to a right of reply. Right of reply, Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, my fellow councillors, including the comments from Councillor Duncan. I don't want to in any way downplay, opposition to the motion or to the project. And I'll just flag that I'm going to be fully supporting 4.3 if that's what Councillor Duncan wishes to move, because look, the Heritage Trust, and Your Worship, if I may, I'll just comment. The Heritage Trust has got a long history in Taihape, and I was involved with that trust some 25 years ago as a willing helper on the ground in the theatre. They've got credibility. They've got history in terms of getting stuff done. So they will be good partners in a project. In terms of our amenities block, we have to get on and do it. I would have loved to have seen it as one of our shovel-ready projects in your Mayor's report today, Your Worship, but it's not quite there, but it almost is. So I think without any further ado, we should put the motion. I back up your comments that you made around we need to get on and do this and show some support in the north of the district. I think if we weren't to go down this track, there would be some big question marks raised by the community, and we've got some other big projects coming up around council assets in the future, and so I think we need to show some real strength and push on and get this project done for the betterment of everybody. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much. Having had a right of reply, I now must put the motion. Those in favour of, please raise your hands. Those against? I'm recording a nay vote from Councillor Duncan. The motion is carried. Thank you very much. I just want to tidy up whether, Councillor Duncan, do you wish to move effectively 4.3 before we take a break?
Yes, thank you, Your Honour. I would, I'm sorry, Your Worship. Yes, I would like to move that the council invites the Taihape Heritage Trust to lead a working party to include council representatives to consider the long-term preservation of the grandstand.
Thank you. I have a seconder in Councillor Hura. Any questions around this before I move to your... No, do you wish to speak to your motion?
No, thank you.
Any speakers to the motion? Councillor Gordon?
Yes, Your Worship and councillors, I think in supporting this, council needs to be extremely open-minded about where the Heritage Trust might wish to go. And if I may, I'll share with you, I'm a member of the Musicians Club in Taihape, and we own the old brewery building. I can tell you we don't bottle beer in that place. We have musicians in the cellar and we have dry storage in the rest of it that effectively keeps that building alive and maintains it. And if we'd locked ourselves into a mindset of we must make beer or we must do this, we must have a brewery, we would be nowhere. And so we need to support the Heritage Trust in having a reasonably free rein as to what the long-term use of that site could be. And it's about being able to generate income in order to restore and maintain what is one of our iconic parts of our physical landscape. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, councillors. I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Sorry, I should have gone back to you, councillor, for a right of reply. But since everybody was speaking in favour of your motion, that was fine. The motion is carried. I'll now, because we've been running for now over 2 hours, so I'll adjourn and we will look to start again at 3:30. Thank you very much, and we'll be going offline. Thank you.
The Zoom will stay open.
The Zoom will stay open,
And live streaming will stop.
but live streaming will stop. Thank you very much. Thank you, councillors.